Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight's story is about a woman everyone believed was impossible to love, impossible to understand, and absolutely impossible to tame. People called her stubborn. They called her difficult. Some called her arrogant. Others said she was simply too much for any man alive. But then one cowboy walked into her life, looked her straight in the eyes, and said something nobody had ever dared to say before. Sit down and let me show you. If you enjoy emotional stories about love, second chances, and people finding the one person who truly sees them, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin. The town of Red Creek was small enough that everybody knew everybody. That meant everybody knew Emma Carter. And everybody had an opinion about her. Emma owned one of the largest horse ranches in the county. She had inherited it from her grandfather after spending nearly 15 years working beside him. She was beautiful in a way that turned heads wherever she went. But beauty wasn't what people talked about. They talked about her temper. They talked about her independence. They talked about how she never let anyone tell her what to do. At 32 years old, she had never been married. Not because men hadn't tried. A lot of men had tried. Doctors, lawyers, business owners. Even a state senator once spent 3 months trying to win her heart. Every single one failed. Some lasted a few weeks. Some lasted a few months. One lasted almost a year. But eventually every relationship ended the same way. The man would leave shaking his head. And the town would say the same thing. She's too much. Emma pretended she didn't care. But the truth was more complicated. The truth was that she had spent years building walls around her heart. Walls so high that nobody could climb over them. Years earlier, she had watched her mother stay in a marriage that slowly destroyed her confidence. Her father controlled everything. Every decision. Every dream. Every opinion. By the time Emma was 16, she had promised herself something. No man would ever control her. No man would ever tell her who she should be. No man would ever make her feel small. But it also isolated her. Without realizing it, she began seeing every disagreement as a threat. Every suggestion as control. Every criticism as rejection. And little by little, relationships became impossible. Then one autumn afternoon, everything changed. Emma was supervising workers repairing a fence near the north pasture, when she noticed a dusty pickup truck rolling down the gravel road. The truck looked old enough to belong in a museum. The driver stepped out. Tall. Weathered cowboy hat. Worn boots. A calm expression. He looked like someone who belonged in another era. Emma walked toward him. Can I help you? The stranger smiled. I'm looking for work. She crossed her arms. We're not hiring. That's okay. Then why are you here? Heard you had a horse nobody could break. Emma frowned. Now she was interested. A massive black stallion with enough attitude to terrify experienced riders. 3 trainers had already quit. One had ended up in the hospital. Thunder trusted nobody. The cowboy glanced toward the pasture. Mind if I take a look? You think you can handle him? No. Her eyebrows lifted. No. He shook his head. I think we can learn to handle each other. For the first time all day, Emma found herself smiling. Just a little. What's your name? Luke Walker. Well, Luke Walker, good luck. He tipped his hat. Thank you. The next few days became the town's favorite source of entertainment. Everybody expected Luke to fail. Thunder had beaten everyone else. Why would this cowboy be different? But Luke didn't rush. He didn't try to dominate the horse. Instead, he spent hours simply sitting near the fence. Watching. Waiting. Talking softly. Day after day. People laughed. They called him crazy. But Luke ignored them. A week later, something incredible happened. Thunder approached him willingly. The entire ranch stopped to watch. Emma stood frozen. She had never seen the horse do that before. Luke gently scratched the stallion's neck. Thunder lowered his head. The giant animal looked completely relaxed. Emma couldn't believe it. "How did you do that?" she asked. Luke smiled. "I listened." "You listened?" Most people try to teach before they understand. Emma stared at him. Something about those words stayed with her. A few weeks passed. Luke became a regular part of ranch life. The workers liked him. The horses trusted him. Even the old ranch dogs followed him around. And somehow, despite her best efforts, Emma found herself spending more and more time talking to him. What surprised her most was that Luke never tried to impress her. He never bragged. Never competed. Never acted intimidated by her success. He simply treated her like a normal person. One evening they sat on the fence overlooking the fields. The sunset painted the sky orange and gold. Emma noticed Luke watching the horizon. "What are you thinking about?" He smiled. "How quiet it is." She laughed. "Most people think this ranch is loud." She looked at him curiously. "What does that mean?" Luke was silent for a moment. Then he spoke. "My wife passed away 6 years ago." Emma froze. He rarely talked about himself. "I'm sorry." He nodded. "For a long time I couldn't stand silence. It reminded me she was gone." Emma didn't know what to say. Luke continued. "Then one day I realized silence wasn't empty." "What was it?" "A chance to hear what matters." For the first time in years, Emma felt herself lowering her guard. Just a little. As winter approached, rumors spread through town. People noticed how often Luke and Emma were together. The gossip exploded. Most people predicted disaster. They believed Luke would eventually leave just like everyone else. One afternoon Emma overheard a conversation at a local diner. A woman at the next table shook her head. "That cowboy seems nice." Her friend nodded. "Too nice. She always does." Emma walked out before they noticed her. But their words followed her home. That night she couldn't sleep. What if they were right? What if she really was impossible? What if every failed relationship wasn't bad luck? What if the problem was her? A few days later, those fears exploded into reality. It started with something small. A broken irrigation system. Luke suggested a different repair strategy. Emma disagreed. The discussion became an argument. The argument became a fight. Old fears surfaced. Old habits returned. Before she realized what was happening, she was raising her voice. Defending herself. Attacking him. Building walls. Luke listened quietly. When she finally stopped speaking, he looked at her calmly. Then he said something nobody else had ever said. "Emma." "What?" "Sit down." She stared at him. "What did you just say?" "Sit down and let me show you something." She couldn't believe his nerve. Most men would have walked away by now. Others would have shouted back. Luke did neither. His voice remained calm. Steady. Confident. Against her better judgment, she Saturday. Luke picked up a piece of rope lying nearby. Without saying a word, he tied several knots into it. Then he handed it to her. What do you see? She frowned. A rope. No. She looked again. Knots? Luke nodded. Exactly. She still didn't understand. So? He pointed toward the rope. Every knot is a hurt. Emma's expression changed. Every betrayal. Another knot. Every disappointment. Another knot. Every fear. Another knot. Soon the rope looked tangled and twisted. Then he held it up. What happens when life pulls on this rope? It tightens. Exactly. The harder life pulls, the tighter the knots become. Emma said nothing. For the first time, she knew exactly what he meant. Luke gently placed the rope in her hands. You're not difficult, Emma. Her throat tightened. You're hurt. She looked away. Luke continued softly. And every time someone gets close, you expect them to pull those knots tighter. Years of defenses suddenly felt transparent. Exposed. Tears filled her eyes. I don't know how to stop. Luke smiled gently. You don't have to untie every knot tonight. Then what do I do? You trust someone enough to help. The tears finally escaped. 4 years people had criticized her. Judged her. Labeled her. Until now. Over the following months, everything slowly changed. Not overnight. Not magically. But gradually. Emma learned to listen instead of immediately defending herself. Luke learned when to speak and when to simply be present. They had disagreements. They made mistakes. They became conversations. The people in town noticed the difference. Laughing more. Living more. One spring morning, nearly a year after Luke arrived, Emma received unexpected news. The offer was enormous. More money than she had ever imagined. Many people urged her to accept. Some said she'd be foolish not to. Emma spent days thinking about it. Finally she asked Luke. What would you do? Luke looked around the ranch. The horses. The fields. The old barn. Then he smiled. Does selling it make your heart lighter or heavier? Emma already knew the answer. Then there's your answer. She declined the offer. Months later the corporation purchased neighboring land instead. Within a year the project failed. Many local ranchers suffered losses. Emma's survived. The town once again talked about her. But this time differently. They talked about her wisdom. Her strength. Her leadership. And increasingly, they talked about Luke. People began realizing something. Luke hadn't changed Emma. He hadn't controlled her. He hadn't tamed her. He had simply helped her become the person she already was beneath the fear. One evening during the annual county fair, the entire town gathered near the rodeo arena. Music played. Children laughed. The air smelled of barbecue and fresh hay. Emma and Luke stood watching the sunset. Then Luke reached into his pocket. Emma's heart skipped. He pulled out a small box. The crowd nearby gradually noticed. Conversations slowed. People turned to watch. Luke smiled nervously. For the first time since she'd met him, he actually looked uncertain. Emma. She covered her mouth. Tears already forming. Luke took a deep breath. The day I met you, everyone told me the same thing. She laughed through tears. What was that? They said you were too much for any man. The crowd chuckled. Emma rolled her eyes. Luke smiled. They were wrong. Her eyes widened. Luke continued. You aren't too much. His voice grew stronger. You love deeply. You fight for what matters. The crowd grew silent. You refuse to settle for less than honesty. Emma couldn't stop crying. And those aren't flaws. The entire fairground seemed frozen. They are the reasons I fell in love with you. Emma's hands trembled. Luke opened the box. Inside was a beautiful ring. Simple. Elegant. Perfect. Will you marry me? For a moment she couldn't speak. Years of fear. Years of disappointment. Years of loneliness. All of it led to this moment. Finally she nodded. Then laughed. Then cried harder. Yes. The crowd erupted. Applause. Cheers. Whistles. Some people even wiped away tears. Luke slipped the ring onto her finger. Emma wrapped her arms around him. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid. Not because life had become perfect. Not because pain would never return. But because she finally understood something important. Love was about finding someone willing to understand you. Someone patient enough to see beyond the walls. Someone brave enough to stay. Someone wise enough to recognize that what others call flaws are often scars from battles nobody else sees. A year later, Luke and Emma were married beneath a giant oak tree on the ranch. As Emma walked down the aisle, she noticed many of the people who once criticized her. Many of them were crying. Not because they felt guilty, but because they finally understood. They had spent years seeing a difficult woman. Luke had seen a wounded heart. And because he chose understanding instead of judgment, everything changed. So if there's one lesson in today's story, it's this. Sometimes the person everyone calls difficult is simply carrying invisible burdens. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who have been hurt the most. And sometimes all it takes is one patient soul willing to say, "Sit down and let me show you." Because understanding can heal wounds that criticism never will. And love grows strongest where judgment ends. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another heartwarming tale. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.